If you've been thinking about building your own router, now is probably one of the more interesting times to consider it. With the recent FCC-related concerns around consumer routers, pricing and long-term availability have become a bigger question, especially for some of the brands a lot of people normally buy. That's led more people to ask whether building your own router actually makes sense. So I took a small mini PC and installed pfSense Community Edition on it to see how practical it really is. In this video, I'll walk through the hardware, the full pfSense setup, and the changes I'd recommend if you actually want to use something like this at home. Most importantly, I'll break down who this makes sense for and who should avoid it entirely. Before getting into the hardware, I want to be clear about the router situation. Existing routers are not suddenly illegal, and anything you already own can continue to be used. The FCC issue is mainly about future consumer router models, especially foreign-produced models, getting authorization for import, sale, and marketing in the United States. Previously authorized models aren't automatically banned, but there could be longer-term supply, pricing, and firmware update implications. This will all be dependent on how manufacturers handle conditional approvals and US manufacturing requirements. All of this uncertainty may also push prices higher, which can make the DIY router math look better, but the real reason to consider a build like this is not fear. It is features, flexibility, and control. Keep that in mind as we go through this. Now let's talk about the Beelink EQ14 that I'll be using for this build. The CPU is an Intel N150, so it has 4 cores and it's around 10 watts at idle in my testing. That's one of the main selling points for a router's use case because it has to be power efficient. That means that you want something that's powerful for the task, but it also means that since it's running 24/7, you need to ensure it's not going to cost a lot in electricity. That's the main reason why the N150 in this device does very well. It comes with 16 gigabytes of DDR5 memory, a 500 gigabyte NVMe drive, and this is the important part. It has two 2.5 gigabit NICs that are built in. That 2-port setup is what makes this work as a router without needing any extra hardware. pfSense needs a minimum of 2 NICs, one for WAN and one for LAN. The EQ14 has both out of the box, which is not as common in this price range as you'd think. In terms of pricing though, it has moved around a lot. You're looking at somewhere around $300 to $400 depending on when you're watching this and when you decide to buy. If you already have one sitting around for general mini PC use, this video might save you from buying a dedicated router. But if you're buying specifically for pfSense, I'd at least look at some of the other options that come with 4 2.5 gig ports for a similar price. More ports will give you more flexibility down the road. I'm using the EQ14 because I have it and I want to showcase that you don't need something that looks like a traditional router to do this. You just mainly need a device that has 2 ports. The final thing to keep in mind is that we're creating a router and firewall in this video. You'll still need a managed switch and access points for your local network to actually utilize what we'll be creating for your devices to connect wired or wirelessly. Now let's look at the software we're going to run on this. And it's going to come down to pfSense CE or Community Edition versus pfSense Plus. CE is free, open source, based on FreeBSD, and has everything that you need for home use, and that's the main reason why we're using it. pfSense Plus is only free if you use Netgate's own hardware. If you want it to run on something like a mini PC, you're going to have to pay an annual fee. In my opinion, there's no reason to pay for that for a home build unless you have a very specific feature you need that's only in pfSense Plus. For everything else that we're going to be doing here, Community Edition is the right decision. The other option that's worth mentioning is OpenSense. It's forked from pfSense and it was done years ago. It's free, it's actively developed, and some people actually prefer it. One of the reasons why people might pick it in this situation is concerns over where Netgate is headed with Community Edition long term and if there will be any changes. With that said, personally, I'm not super worried, and that's what we're going to be using. I just want you to keep in mind that OpenSense is a legitimate alternative in this space, and you might want to explore it. So let's get into the installation. Head to pfSense.org, get the Community Edition installer, and flash it to a USB drive using Rufus or Beelink Etcher. Make sure you can boot from the USB. To do this, you'll probably need to go into your BIOS and change the boot order. Once the installer loads, you'll get a file system choice between ZFS and UFS, and I'll be using ZFS. It gives you better data integrity and snapshot capabilities, and the EQ14 has more than enough resources to handle it. Install to the NVMe drive, let it finish, and reboot. Once that's done, plug device into the LAN port and pull up the web UI in a web browser. The default credentials are admin and pfSense. Now you can run through the setup wizard. You'll set your host name, DNS servers, time zone, and WAN type. For most ISPs, WAN type is DHCP, but for some users, you're going to need to use PPPoE. If you're not sure which, you should check with your ISP. Set your DHCP range for the LAN, confirm everything looks right, and you're done with the setup wizard. Now we're going to look at some of the best practice changes I make before doing anything else with a fresh pfSense install, but keep in mind that this is really just a baseline. First, you should update the system. Go to System, then Update, and let it pull the latest version before you do anything else. Next, you should enable HTTPS if it's not enabled already. Finally, you should set up automatic configuration backups. pfSense has a built-in backup feature, but there are also packages you can use if you'd like. I always recommend this because there is absolutely nothing worse than spending a few hours configuring something and then having no backup to roll back to if anything goes wrong. Now we're going to move on to VLANs. This is one of the biggest reasons to move off a consumer router, and it's something that everyone running pfSense should do. Consumer routers either don't support VLANs at all or have such limited implementations that they don't really do what you're looking for them to do. pfSense gives you full control over this, so you can go to Interfaces, then Assignments, then the VLANs tab. Create your VLANs, assign them a parent interface, give them a VLAN tag number, and save. After that, you can go back to the interface assignments, add each VLAN as an interface, enable it, and set a static IP for it. From there, enable the DHCP server on each VLAN interface so devices on that segment get addresses automatically. I have two videos that can help go over this, one that explains VLANs and the other that shows the VLANs that the average person needs. For most, it'll be a default, IoT, and guest, but check out those videos if you're interested in learning more or customizing further. The part where people normally get confused with pfSense is firewall rules. By default, pfSense will deny everything that isn't explicitly allowed. That's the right default, meaning that you need to create an allow rule to ensure that traffic from that VLAN will actually work. That's going to be for the internet as well as other VLANs. Just keep in mind that the default LAN by default has an allow all rule, so for that specific VLAN, you don't actually have to create any rules. But if you wanted to limit access, you would potentially have to create a few. Because of that, for each VLAN, go to the firewall rules and add exactly what you need. You want to create the firewall rules on the VLAN where the traffic is originating. For example, if you want the default LAN to access the IoT VLAN, you need to have an allow rule from LAN to IoT. Again, we don't actually need to create that because the rule is already created by default, but that's how you should keep it in mind. You will be generating the firewall rule on the interface where the traffic is originating from. The last thing to keep in mind is that by default, pfSense firewall rules are executed from top to bottom. This means that you can get very specific with these firewall rules. So if you wanted to ensure that your IoT network cannot access any private IP addresses, but can access the internet, you'd create a block rule that drops traffic from the IoT VLAN subnet to the RFC 1918 address range. This is the private network space. Then what you do is create an allow rule underneath that to access the internet. Again, since firewall rules are executed from top to bottom, the private traffic would be dropped, but the actual external traffic would be allowed. One other thing to keep in mind is that VLANs on pfSense only handle the routing and firewall side. To actually use them across your network, like I mentioned earlier, you need a managed switch and access points that support VLAN tagging. I ran this exact setup for many years, and I used UniFi switches and access points. And overall, it worked very, very well with pfSense. You configure the VLANs in pfSense, then you pass those VLANs through to your managed switches and access points. Now that you have all of the basics running, this is where you can really start to customize pfSense. You can install WireGuard or OpenVPN to run a VPN server. You can add Suricata or Snort for IDS and IPS, and overall, the N150 in this device is powerful enough to run all of those at good speeds, which is something that a lot of consumer routers cannot do reliably. I have a bunch of written tutorials on pfSense on my website, and I'll leave a link for that in the description, but overall, those are going to go deeper on a lot of this. Finally, I said at a few points in this video that I ran pfSense for a few years, but I'm not currently using it as my firewall. In late 2024, I made the switch from pfSense to a UniFi cloud gateway, and I learned a lot from doing that. Overall, I want to give you my experience, so here's what pfSense gives you that UniFi doesn't. You get deeper firewall controls, though it's gotten a lot better on the Ubiquiti side with newer versions of UniFi Network. You get very, very granular IDS and IPS configuration, and this is the one I think is a massive difference and is ultimately what pushed me to Ubiquiti, but could be what pushes you to pfSense. You can do just about whatever you want on pfSense, but with Ubiquiti, it's managed by a checkbox and some basic controls. For me, that was a benefit because I wanted to minimize complexity. But you do lose a lot of those granular controls, and that's why I said some people might want to use pfSense. That doesn't mean that it's bad on UniFi, and in fact, it could be viewed as a benefit since it's so simple. The main reason it would be viewed that way is because you're generally going to set it up right away on UniFi hardware, where you kind of need to plan and dedicate time to configuring it on pfSense. So if you kick that can down the road, and you don't actually set it up on pfSense, you're not going to be using it, where with a UniFi Cloud Gateway, generally, you would have it enabled by default. You also have more flexible VPN options and a full package ecosystem in pfSense. So with that said, here's what UniFi gives you that pfSense doesn't. Generally, it gives you simplicity and an integrated dashboard that covers everything from your switches and APs to your firewall, all in a single pane of glass. You can potentially have less maintenance depending on exactly what you're using. You'll definitely have a faster initial setup, and you're going to have a dedicated mobile application that you can use to manage your network. The cost is roughly similar depending on the hardware you plan on using, and in some cases can even be cheaper. For context, a UniFi Express 7 is around $200. For most home users, UniFi is going to win on usability, but for home lab users who want more control and don't mind the maintenance, pfSense is going to win on flexibility. So here's the honest answer. Is this worth it for most people? No, it's not. pfSense has a real learning curve to it, and you can get lost very, very quickly. You're responsible for every single firewall rule, every update, and every single configuration decision. If your router has issues at 11 p.m., you're the one debugging it and trying to figure out why. Now, to be fair, is that likely to happen? It didn't happen to me, but it was a lot more time consuming than my UniFi Cloud Gateway has been. And that's one of the main reasons I think people get pushed to a UniFi Cloud Gateway when they're looking at it. You're not necessarily going to get all of the customization that you get with something like pfSense or OpenSense, but you get a lot more usability, and generally it's easier to manage. It also might not be a one-to-one from a feature perspective, but for most of the features that users need, it will offer those in an easier to use package. With all of that said, if you're one of the people who is already running a home lab, if you want deep firewall control, if you want IDS and IPS that's very configurable, or if you want to understand how networking works at a more granular level, this is genuinely one of the best ways to do that. It's also important to keep in mind that if you want to use pfSense, you don't necessarily have to go the DIY route like we did in this video. There are plenty of pfSense devices that come with it loaded that you can buy directly from Netgate, and even come with pfSense Plus instead of pfSense Community Edition. As of today, the costs are actually a lot closer than they were in the past due to mini PC prices rising so much. If you have a mini PC already, costs don't really matter since pfSense CE is free. I'd really suggest looking at everything before deciding on going the DIY route. It might be the right call, or it might not be. I've got videos on UniFi setup and a bunch of pfSense articles on my website that I'll leave links for in the description, But I want to hear from you. Would you actually go the DIY route for a router, or is it something you'd rather buy? I'm truly interested in hearing and seeing what people think on this. But other than that, if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.